Hey, it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. Today, I am interviewing my very own team, my team of designers at Rebecca Hay Designs. It's kind of unprecedented. You are going to hear directly from their mouths what it is like inside our design firm and what it was like in the early days. I have a couple people who started with me at the very beginning, and then someone who's relatively recent to the team. So I think it's going to be a really interesting insight for you. We had a lot of fun recording this. Everyone comes at it with a different experience, a different perspective, and I hope that this helps you understand the value of having a process in your business. The girls will go into a bit more detail with you about what it used to be like, and we share the early years, but we also share the value of time blocking now and what are the specific elements that have been the most effective parts of our process. So come join the team from Rebecca Hay Designs. And I'm also launching my masterclass today. So if you guys want to learn a lot more about process and how to just start, then come join the masterclass. It's rebeccahay.com/masterclass, and I will also put it in the show notes. Enjoy the podcast. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. Are you as tired as I am working in a bubble? I mean, shoot. It's time to maybe socially distance with other people. That is why I love coming to the Collective Workspace. If you are someone who is looking for a little bit of stimulation, a lot of beauty, the Collective Workspace is a really great place to go. It is a co-working space for designers, architects, and builders in Toronto, and they're opening a second location this spring. They have flex workspace and offices starting at $120 a month. There's boardrooms, a podcast booth, which is where I am right now, concierge storage, and a trade-only design library. You can find out more, or if you want to book a tour, go to thecollectiveto.com. All right, we're live. Hey guys, welcome to the Resilient by Design podcast. This is a first for me. I've never interviewed for the podcast anyone from our team. For those listening, this is a pretty special and rare occurrence that you get to actually hear from everyone within the design team. I have 3 beautiful designers here with me today that have been working with me now for a while, and we are just going to dive right in and tackle all the things that we're going to share. I'm really curious, actually, from your perspective, not just mine, because everyone hears my perspective all day long. I think it's really interesting for other designers listening to hear from inside the team. Like, what is it really like? What have we really learned? What are the mistakes that we've made? And how have we learned from them? And how have we corrected? So before I jump into all the juicy goodness, can you each just maybe take a quick turn and introduce yourselves and let the listeners know a little bit more about who you are? Who wants to start? Rebecca.
Hi, I'm the other Rebecca. I've been working, I think, in the industry for almost 5 years now. I have my diploma in interior design and also my degree in interior design. I actually worked for Rebecca when I first started in the industry, and then I came back to her about, 2 years ago now? And now I've been working with you for about 2 years.
Awesome. And you don't live in Toronto. You live outside the city.
Yes. I am very much a northern girl.
You're a northern girl. Yeah, it can get confusing. Advice to other designers, hire someone with the same name as you, but find a way so that people know which person is emailing them, because it gets a little complicated having two Rebeccas. That's for sure.
All my emails at the end say Rebecca W.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's still confusing, but that's how I make sure.
I email our clients, like the clients of the projects that you're in charge of. I always respond. I always hit cheers, Rebecca. Hey, because otherwise, it can work. It has its advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, for sure.
Claudia, how about you? Share.
Hi, I'm Claudia. I've been working for Rebecca now for almost 2 years. I started off in this industry actually 2 years ago because I was Rebecca's intern when I started. I went back to school later on in life. I was working for Air Canada as a flight attendant for almost 10 years up until the pandemic hit. I had fully intended on maintaining it as like a sweet perks job on the weekends that I could continue as I embarked on my interior design degree. But you know what? Things always work out the way they should. And I interned for Rebecca. It was a great experience for both of us. And I stayed on the team and it's been great.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're here. I think that for anyone who's listening to Claudia's path is super interesting, because there you were to become you were a flight attendant. Like that was your life. And you realized it wasn't for you. So I know there's some people listening to this podcast that maybe haven't made that leap yet into interior design, but they're on the fence. So I love that you bring that to the table. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, Alyssa.
Hello, I'm Alyssa. I've been working with Rebecca for around 5 years, almost 5 years this summer. And I've been in the industry for close to 10 years. Feels like forever. And my background is similar to Rebecca Weatherall's, where I went to school, got my bachelor's degree with a focus on interior design. And I actually started out doing condo design and condo selections at the beginning of my career, and did a bit of millwork design in the middle. And then once I started with Rebecca, went full-fledged into residential.
Full-fledged. So Alyssa was not my first, but one of my very first hires. And I know for those of you who follow us, you probably already knew that. And so she has really been with us the longest, and she has seen the company grow. I would have to say by leaps and bounds, with many bumps and hurdles along the way. And I can't wait to maybe share some of those, because people love to hear the nitty-gritty, shitty stuff. So we're going to share some of that today. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I think the best way to go about this is I just want to start off by maybe asking some questions, and we're not going to go around the table. So I just feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself and share. I think it's interesting because all of you did go to school for interior design. I think a great place to start would be how much of your design career is what you expected it to be when you were starting out in design school? Does anybody want to share the difference of what you thought it was going to be like and what has been the most striking? Claudia?
I think for me, I'm the freshest out of school, I guess. So I feel like my perspective would probably be really fresh on this one, just in terms of what my expectations were once I left. So I went to Ryerson School of Interior Design. It was very focused kind of on the architecture, and very not focused on, I guess, the decor of a space. And I think that was a bit of a kind of a transition once I left, because at the end of the day, people still, associate interior design with the beauty of the space, and they kind of care less so much about the kind of the function. And that was a huge transition for me from school to starting in residential, was just what people's expectations of what we do were. I think once I'm, involved with clients and with our team members, I think that's when you realize, okay, no, it still is very much about the function of the space. It's just people's perceptions were a bit different of the profession. I think I just had to really start learning about people's perceptions of it and my own versus what was kind of being taught to us in school. It's very, very rigid. It was very, very much about kind of model making and how to build a space and less about, I guess, clients. And I think that was a very big transition for me. As you start dealing with the real life, it is clients first and the building last. And I think that for me was a very big adjustment from school to actual practice. I think it was very important to have that.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I mean, my perspective, it's been longer since I was in school, but I do realize like they never really taught me much about working with clients, dealing with clients. And even if you're not the business owner, you still are facing clients, right? And I think you're right. It's so, and sometimes that can be the biggest challenge designers face is how do you handle a situation? How do you massage this to make your client happy? Does anyone else want to share something, have a similar experience? Yeah, Rebecca?
So I will say what Claudia was saying about the clients first. I remember in school that there was no budget. So I would go crazy with my concept and like my fabrics. And I still, because I have like 5 years in school, that's almost like my mindset. So like, as you know, like I tend to go over budget sometimes.
Rebecca Weatherall has very expensive taste.
Yeah.
She kept trying to tell me to spend more money in my own home reno. I was like, wait a second, this isn't your money.
So yes, definitely. I feel like that was like the biggest kind of leap for me. It's just like, I wish they would teach you that I wish they would give you a budget in school and they would teach you to practice that because that's real life. Everyone has a budget.
Yeah, totally. Alyssa, you're nodding your head. Anything you want to add to that?
I completely agree. They both hit on very good points. I remember doing school projects and like budget was never a conversation. And like budget is the main focus of every project we work on. So I don't understand how there's not a greater focus when you're in school to help people just understand the numbers and how a budget could go crazy out of the range of what people are willing to spend. And then I would say one other thing that I think was a big adjustment period was I went to the Academy of Design and Technology, and our curriculum was mainly focused on like commercial spaces. We did have a couple projects where we did some residential stuff, but majority of the stuff that they teach you is about how to do like retail environments or hospitality. There's not as much focus on how to translate those skills into residential homes. So starting to work at a residential firm was a bit of an adjustment period for me because you're trying to kind of focus your energies completely different because sourcing would be different for a commercial project than it would for residential. You're doing more of the finer details of like, what pillow fabric and trim am I going to do versus like, what system am I going to pick for like an office layout? It's very, very different. So,
Yeah, totally. Is there anything that you would say, like you wish you had known before you began your career in interior design? Like I guess we've sort of said it. We said like understanding that you have to work with clients and how to deal with that, budgets. Is there anything else that you feel like would have been helpful to know before diving headfirst into this career?
I will say that one thing that I thought would be a little bit different was I didn't have a good understanding that once you started down a path of like residential design, for instance, that it really takes you away from more commercial opportunities and hospitality opportunities because more firms are very focused and it's very niche. Larger firms have a little bit more flexibility in that respect where they may do more international projects and deal with hotels or things like that in addition to doing residential. So I think that was the biggest surprise. I thought that people always did both. So.
Yeah, Rebecca.
Speaking to that, actually, like in school, there was a lot of commercial focus. And it doesn't really give you a chance to know how much you like residential. When I left school, I was like, I'm going to be in commercial. I'm going to be restaurants because that's what I was basically taught. And there was like a 1 semester of residential and I didn't enjoy it. And then when I started working in like with you, Rebecca, for a residential design firm, I love it. I love the decorating side. I love I love every part. I actually enjoy talking to the clients, and yeah, I wish there was more realism, I guess, in school. But I understand why school does make you want to be more conceptual, because they really want to make you really focus on the artistic and the creative. So there's a lot of differences between real life and school.
So what that brings to mind is a story unrelated of how Rebecca started working for me. And I feel like this is an important story to tell. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned it to you, Rebecca. So for the designers listening and you're like, oh, I don't know when to hire. I don't know who to hire, all the things. I think I had been hiring and then I found someone. And then this girl left me a voicemail on my phone and her name was Rebecca. And she was like very like cheery and bubbly. And she's like, I would love the opportunity to work with you. Something along the lines of like, I really think it would be a great fit for a design aesthetic and all the things. And I was like, okay, well, wow, that's like pretty impressive that she picked up the telephone and called. And you know what? I got busy and I didn't call you back. And then I got an email, and I might be skewing the details, but this is sort of how my memory is acting. That's how I remember it. Sorry. And then I got an email from you, I think with your resume or something like that, and basically reiterating. And I may have responded saying, well, you know, I did just hire, like I really didn't need a second person to help me. I was working out of the spare bedroom in my house, doing small projects that really didn't have big budgets. But there was something about Rebecca. And as back in those days, I was just like spinning, like couldn't stay on top of my inbox. We were just running like mad and crazy. Was it right after I'd hired you, Alyssa? Yeah. Okay. So you were the one who I had hired. Okay. So then Alyssa and I were like running around like mad. And then this girl, Rebecca, just wouldn't leave me alone. And she called again and she followed up. And I was like, I need this girl on my team. No, seriously. I said to my husband, I'm like, she called me back like on the phone and followed up. I'm like, that is a keeper. And I brought you in and I like hired you, even though I really didn't even think I had the hours, because I was like, I can't lose someone with this much initiative. And I will never forget, you also said that your favorite color was also red, because my logo at the time was red, because red is actually my favorite color. Everyone thinks it's blue because I design a lot with blue, but I love red. And so that's how I found you. And so for those of you looking to find the right person, like trust your gut. And unfortunately, Rebecca couldn't stay with us. It was a bit of a commute for you at the time. And so, but you look at that, you boomeranged back, girl.
Yes, the boomerang designer.
Yeah. So if anyone out here too is looking to work for a designer, persistence pays. The power of the follow-up, I can tell you, everyone is so darn busy. We don't necessarily not want you. We just forget that you sent us an email. I will tell you that happens to me all the time. Yeah. Claudia, you had your hand up. You're like a good little student.
I was going to say, I think we found our next salesperson, Rebecca Weatherall.
Ooh, damn. Why didn't I think of that? All right.
That is, I will say, like, I'll give that to my mom. My mom was the one that taught me, if you really want something, you have to be persistent. So I remember pulling up, actually, my friend showed me your firm, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to work here. I know it's in Toronto, but I really liked your design aesthetic. I thought it was very much like me too. And yeah, so my mom said, like, if you want it, you got to be persistent. And so, yeah, I kept calling. And I remember actually you called me and you hired me, and it was my birthday. And I'll never forget that. It was on my birthday that you hired me. Yeah.
I didn't realize that. Oh my gosh. And then I hired Alyssa like the week you were getting married or something.
Yeah. I had my interview the Monday and I got married the Sunday.
Yeah. Anyways, I just thought that was a fun little tidbit. Okay, so let's carry on with this. We're gonna get into the juicy stuff in just a minute. Before we do, is there anything? Okay, how much of your career working either with me or somewhere else in design has been designing versus spending time managing trades and clients? How would you kind of, if you had to give it like a percentage, designing, working with trades, working with clients, how would that pan out?
I think it would probably be about 20% designing, 80% actually coordinating, managing, troubleshooting, budgeting, all of those things, the administrative stuff, emails, contacting people. I think the design it's very important and it's the foundation, but it's a very small portion of what I think a designer does.
Yeah. And would you guys agree, disagree?
I would agree. I feel over the years of working in design, the responsibilities of the back end have increased, whether it is client communication, communication with vendors and or trades, and just making sure the entire process for the person that is trusting you with their home is followed and cared for, to make sure that the end result is just as lovely as you imagined it would be. But the design portion, while it's stressful up front, never takes as much time as the back end.
Yeah. Speaking to that, I definitely didn't realize how much project managing goes into design. Like I thought, as interior designer, being out of school, I would just be focusing on that. But the amount of project management, I almost wish like either school had like a project management side or taking an extra course in project management, because that is a huge part of what we do as working for a firm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think every firm obviously is set up differently, but unless you're working for a very large sort of architectural firm or big design build firm, it's likely that you will be involved in that side to some degree. And yeah, I think that's sometimes the harsh reality of once you start designing, whether you work for someone or you run your own business, you get into this because you're creative and you want to design and you've got a good eye and you can make spaces cozy and inviting. But unfortunately, that's just not enough. And I always say to designers, I say like, it sometimes, I know this sounds extreme, but sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are. If you can't manage your client relationships and keep the project running smoothly till the end, because there's a lot of great designers out there who can do a lot of pretty things, but they're not all equally business minded. They're not all equally good with their clients. And also, if you don't market your business, you could be really good. No one knows you exist. Okay. I want to talk about the early years because I've got Alyssa and Rebecca, who was here with us from the very beginning. I think maybe Alyssa, you should start, and then we can kind of talk a bit about how our process has basically evolved over time. Alyssa, why don't you just start by telling everyone, what did our process look like when you started working for me?
We had no process.
I realized that I asked that question.
That's the long and short of it. We had no process. We kind of literally flew by the seat of our pants. We were organized with the flying by the seat of our pants. But our process kind of was like room to room as an idea kind of came to us. So we would source and we would have somewhat informal meetings at like clients' houses to show them like what our thoughts were for just their living room when we were doing maybe like their whole main floor. And then as things would arrive, we would deliver them, as opposed to now we deliver everything all at the same time, because it's hard. What we discovered was that when you are not so much designing in isolation, but also delivering in isolation, it gives people an opportunity to see something out of context, and they can't visualize an entire space the way that a designer visualizes everything. So I won't call the client out like by name, but I remember one project in particular that caused us to go the route of trying to streamline. And it was, we were doing their main floor. I think it was their living room and their dining room and a bit of their entry. And everything was arriving at different times. We had delivered, I think it was like a porch swing or like rocking chairs. And then like a lamp came in the living room. And like the coffee table ottoman arrived, the dining table arrived, but like the wingback chairs weren't there. And like the little side table for the porch was there. And when we delivered, I think it was the floor lamp was when the ripple effect started. We delivered the floor lamp and they had their grandkids over and they said, oh, it's so accessible for the grandkids to just like grab the lamp and like move them. So we feel like they're dangerous. We don't want them here. But we're like, but there's chairs that are going to sit in front of those lamps. Like they're not going to be accessible like this when the design is done. And they were like, no, I don't really like it. So we're like, okay, we'll take back the lamp. Then it was, oh, we don't think that the swing on our porch is going to work now. So we want to get rid of the swing too. And then it was the dining table. Well, the dining table was a whole nother issue, but like the dining table was a problem. And then it was the lamp, the pendant light above the dining table became a problem. And like, it just continued to spiral. And once you gave into like the one thing, you can't say no to all the other requests, but you just really wanted them to say like, just wait until everything arrives so you can see it all together, so that you can understand why we picked what we picked, and you'll love it just as much as we do. So in contrast, now when we're doing a project, we deliver everything in one day and or 2 days without the clients being home, so we can give them a big reveal of the space, and they see everything in context, which I have to say, it can be a little stressful when you're trying to coordinate everything like that, but the end game of it is so much more rewarding. And there's a lot less back and forth at the end of a project to try and change items, because they understand the overall look and what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, so that project, those listening, you've heard me talk about it probably. I refer to that project as the lemon job. So clearly, Alyssa and I both have a strong memory of the same project. And I will add that the dining room pendant fixture is now hanging in our boardroom. And the swing we also got stuck with. We used at the home show and then it just went missing. Yeah, Rebecca wants to add something.
Oh man, I was there for that project, like the end of it, doing the install day. I remember that project, but I remember significantly, I have like this picture in my head still of the swing on, I think it was Alyssa's car or your car, Rebecca. And I just remember.
Oh my God, I have to find that picture somewhere. Oh, I don't know if I can find it. That was so true. Because like back then we would never have paid to hire movers. We tried to do everything ourselves or like coordinate deliveries on different days. Oh my God. Yes, that swing was like the size of Alyssa's car.
No, it was your car.
My car.
I don't think was it my car?
Oh no,
it was an SUV.
Later, I think another time. Take it away.
It was your car. It was strapped to the top of your car. And I was holding it through the sunroof so that it didn't slide off as we turned the corners.
Those were the good old days, right? Ugh. Okay, so that's an example of how we didn't have a process. And I've definitely talked about that before. I think it would be interesting too, just to share, like, what was your everyday, like when you showed up at my house, because the office was in my house, explain a little bit about that experience. Because I know I had one baby, I had Joseph. And he would nap in the room next door. So we'd have to be quiet and keep the door closed. And we'd have like lunch in the kitchen, I think, sometimes in the backyard. And then I had a second child and it was like, okay, we got to get this office out of here. But tell me, and Rebecca, you were there during those days too. We even had a client presentation once in that spare bedroom. Yeah, that's so bogus. Tell anybody else like who's listening, who's like, okay, well, that doesn't sound so bad. Some projects aren't that great. What was like your daily work life like?
I just remember Joseph screaming a lot.
I don't remember that.
I remember that. Yeah, he was, and then you would be like in the middle of like a work like zone, and then he would be screaming, and obviously you need to tend to your kid, but you'd be like, oh, and then I remember that, and then you would get up and you would go and tend to him, and I remember like the space was quite small, and it was interesting, that for sure. I remember going in and it was still like, I don't know, it wasn't that bad, but you definitely needed an office space. But I understood it as like a startup kind of firm. Like that was like the smart decision to do. But yeah, it was definitely, it had challenges, especially with the space. And I remember I think it was almost like once a month or even more, we would change the layout of the office.
Totally.
You'd come in and be like, this office is driving me crazy. We need to organize it. And then we would all go ahead.
I'm pretty sure I still do that.
Yes, you do. And then I remember Alyssa and I setting up the IKEA furniture. Alyssa,
oh, yeah.
That?
It is like my least favorite thing to do is build IKEA furniture after that experience.
Sorry. What I remember is that like, cause now it's our business is so different. Like, wouldn't you agree? Like, especially Alyssa, like we have done a 180 and to the point where, there was no plan. We would, you'd show up in the morning and it'd be like, okay, what fires are we putting out today? What needs to happen first? And we would just kind of divvy up the tasks. And I'd be like, hey, can you help do this thing? Can you work on these drawings? I'm going to do this thing. Who can go pick up the fabric? Who's going to go and look for like, it was like a divide and conquer, chaotic mess. We had no plan. Part of that was that we billed hourly. We didn't design everything up front and then do a presentation. We never did presentations. I think we did only a couple back in those early years. And those weren't really full presentations. They were just like, we're going to do a presentation. And we showed them drawings and a couple fabrics, right? We would show up at our clients' houses with fabrics and throw them on the floor and do the design scheme in front of them. Yeah, Rebecca.
I actually remember, that I know we still have a bit of a struggle with that because sometimes our schedules are just so busy, but time blocking, there was no time blocking, zero. At least we try to practice it now. But I remember going out for fabrics, and then I would come back to the office, and then I have to go back out again because something was missed or we needed something else. And it was chaotic.
Chaos. That is the perfect word to describe the way it used to be. I feel like we've literally gone from chaos to coordinated. And nothing is perfect, obviously, but by golly, when you look back, holy. Okay, I want to get more into this and I want to bring Claudia into this conversation. I think it's interesting to have the perspectives from both ends of the spectrum. We have Alyssa and Rebecca who started with me in the early years. And then Rebecca, you kind of left. And then when you came back, I'm interested to hear your perspective of when you came back, how things were different. And then Claudia, you coming on straight from school, not having had that previous experience and your perspective on our process. So maybe first, Rebecca, I'd love to hear from you. I know I have specific questions. I'm totally veering off the question. And it's more about our internal process and how we work with our clients has changed so much from the beginning. So Rebecca, how would you I guess, express the change from when you first worked with us to now?
So the process, I remember you actually I think it was on your Instagram stories, you talking about this process, and that kind of I really like that because I like structure, and I kind of, as everyone knows on the team, that I'm very kind of need a checklist, step by step kind of thing. And the process was really good for that. And I think when I came in, it was the 15-step process. And I still liked the idea of the process, and it did work. Having an actual structure and process did work. And then from there, it's grown so much since I've come back and worked. And now we're at that 7-step process, and we've reduced it, which we're still kind of learning, but we're always getting better, I think. But with the 15-step process, there were some things that we were from a client facing, a lot of the things didn't make sense. We kind of made it more client facing than it was internal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So Claudia, let's bring you into this conversation because your experience is quite different, obviously, coming out of school. How do you find the process that we use, and you've actually seen it develop from 15 steps to 7. Yep. Do you want to sort of give us a little bit of your thoughts on that process?
Yeah, I think I do feel like I missed out a bit on the chaos.
That's probably for the best.
I feel I think it actually is helpful to have been there when it was a little bit more chaotic, so that you know how much more streamlined it is and can probably appreciate it a lot more. If you come in with something that is already there, you expect it to be fully developed. And I think when I left school, I was fully expecting something totally developed. And I didn't realize that it was a growing, living thing. And actually, I'm appreciative of that because I can also be there in 5 years from now to go, oh, you should have seen 5 years ago, and it was the 7-step process. I think it's very important that it is a living thing and that it continues to get better. However, when I was leaving school, it was actually very similar because at school, you have the deadlines, you have your syllabus, and you have things that are supposed to be on this day, and you have check-in meetings with your professors. So it was very similar. It wasn't that hard of a transition to go into that because I was living it and breathing it currently in school when I was an intern. It was just another deadline that I kind of had and added to my student agenda. So I do think that coming in from a point where it was more developed, I have higher expectations, I think, than when it was less developed and you have seen it grow from nothing and, fabrics on the floor at presentations to this. I think you're more you kind of give it more grace because you're okay, it's been moving along. Whereas when you come in, when it's something already is, kind of bound and ready to go, you expect there to be no problems. You kind of have this expectation where, oh, this is this thing that I'm going to start working and I'm going to use, and I'm on this step, and why isn't this working? So I think it does help people who have been longer using it to appreciate and give it more grace. Whereas like I have a little bit more intolerance, I think, for when things go wrong. I'm like, we have this process. Why isn't it working on this exact day? And I think that comes with experience, and it comes with watching something develop over time.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, we've had other designers over the years come and go. And I would say the ones that didn't fit were probably the ones who came from bigger organizations or straight out of school, expecting it to just be like the corporate world where you just follow all these processes. And we were still trying to figure it out. And there was a lot of frustration, right? And lack of understanding expectations. And as a business owner, in hindsight, or like retrospectively, I understand why it wouldn't have been easy. For Rebecca and Alyssa, like kudos to you for sticking with me. But really, like to go into a role and not know what the expectation is. Like so often, I would just assume that they knew what to do, or it's not really the best way to describe it, but they didn't understand like, okay, what's the next thing I need to do? Because it wasn't outlined, right? It wasn't like, okay, now we're going to book trade day. Let's coordinate all these trades. It was like, okay, what should we do? And I'd say, okay, well, let's see, maybe we should get the contractor there and see if maybe we can get the wallpaper guy in next week. I think there might be some time. And it was like the whole thing was just a total chaotic mess. And I can see coming in when you are looking for direction and you just want to do a good job and you don't know how to do a good job, it can be frustrating for both parties. Yeah. Yeah, Alyssa.
I'll chime in here. From my previous experience before working for Rebecca Hay Designs, I didn't work in like a corporate environment. So at least not in design. I've done it for other types of jobs, but not for design specifically. And all the previous places that I worked with, they also didn't have a very big structured process that you followed. There were like a couple of things that would be outlined so that you understood how to do those tasks. But for the most part, it was kind of like the ebbs and flows of things a lot of small businesses have to deal with to get through a project. Now, looking back, I see things that used to affect me, like more so emotionally, I would say, than now I'm able to like kind of deal with things a lot better because of the experience that I had at the beginning of this journey to get to this process built firm. Before I know Rebecca Weatherall knew this, I used to get a lot of anxiety that like I would be missing something or forgetting to send a client something, and it would be on my mind all the time. Like every week I'd be nervous that I forgot to do a task. And like our time blocking kind of was centered around Joseph naps. So it's like, you don't take any phone calls while the baby's napping. You only do the phone calls in the morning and in the afternoon.
You guys are always so professional.
So like the changes from that. And I also think like working in a home office versus like working in an office space, like we share an office space with Rebecca's husband's company. So it's like, it's still finding a fit of how other people use this space as well. But knowing that we have the ability to talk as loud as we need to get our tasks done is a little bit more comforting. And having the structure of the process to get us through each of our projects and to kind of help focus our energies better is, I would say, one of the biggest improvements from switching from the chaos to this.
Yeah. And I would say one of the greatest things that I've noticed, looking back, is it's so nice on a Sunday night to look at my calendar and really understand how the week is going to play out. Sure, things pop up, surprises, there's issues, but in general, I know every day of the week, like when my meetings are going to be. I know that on Wednesday I have a design meeting with Rebecca Weatherall. I know that I have Team T. I know that I'm recording a podcast. I know that I'm doing whatever. And it's kind of like you said, like I don't have the same chaos in my head. And we've worked really hard to do that as a team. Okay, I want to know what parts specifically of our process have been the most effective, do you guys think? Claudia.
For me, I think we've really streamlined and nailed down the whole concept presentation to presentation phase. Like I think that we've made some adjustments even as soon as this November. Like we've adjusted it even then. And I think it's gotten really, really great and really tight. And from the moment that the client kind of books their discovery call to the consultation, to the concept presentation and the presentation, I think, and including revisions, I think those like steps right there have been extremely streamlined, and they're very, very successful at us understanding our clients and our clients understanding us. I feel super confident at that phase. I think it's extremely well laid out, and we know exactly what is expected of us, and the clients know exactly what they're getting and what they can expect at every step of that time. And I think it works phenomenally well, down to the timeline, down to the meetings that we've arranged with our own team members. And I think it really has helped us to give a better product for our client.
Yeah, I think that's really, I agree with you. I think we are really strong in that second phase, which is the design phase. I mean, Alyssa can remember a time, multiple times, in fact, where we would present and we would be over budget. I think on more than one occasion, we've been like $100,000 over budget on like what was supposed to be a $200,000 project. Remember once we designed someone's house in Mississauga, Alyssa, you remember this one? And we were like, well, it makes the most sense to put the kitchen on the other side of the house. And like, we were just being true designers, right? Like we wanted to make it the best, most functional layout at all costs. And we didn't have a good idea of what things were going to cost. And so we just did it. And then when it was all priced out, we were like beyond budget. And the client was so upset. I think they didn't word it, but it was pretty clear because they didn't hire us to implement. They were so upset that at our approach. And so it's given us a lot of, and I know I say this a lot on the podcast, but learn from your mistakes. And we made mistakes multiple times. And so as a result of all those missteps in the past, we've been able to then pull from that and update and improve our process within that design phase. So it's not been without a lot of sweat and blood and tears, but it's great to see like somebody newer coming into the team, seeing that it's working. Cause like it used to didn't really work before. Like, yeesh. Yeah.
I think like just to double back to like what we were talking about in relation to like school, how important budget is with this process. And I think like in our transition between the way we used to do things to the way we do things now, a biggest learning curve for us was learning how to budget our projects so that we don't end up over budget. Before because we were doing things in smaller steps, we'd find out like maybe like how much your budget is for your living room. And if we were just doing decorating, it was way easier to stay within that number because we controlled a lot of those numbers ourselves with our selections. But now that we're doing a mix of projects and we have to bring in like tertiary people like contractors or wallpaper installers or painters, we needed to get a better understanding of what their numbers were going to look like before we started to pitch things to our clients. Because like you said, as designers, we want to be free and we want to be able to give you what we believe is the best end result of your space if you want to make changes. And when you have a contractor involved, those costs are not things that we can predict. And sometimes they're way higher than we think they will be. And our design kind of suffers at the end of it because it won't look as pretty because all the money's gone into the actual structural work. So I think now what we've done, we used to have like a high and low budget for clients. So we used to show them during the design portion or the decorating portion of the job to show them like a range as to how much things would cost. And now I think we've worked really hard on it. We've done a process of going through all of our past projects and kind of isolating the price points that we think are the general median for how much like a custom sofa is going to cost, so that it's not an unexpected number when we actually go into the design phase. And it gives Rebecca an opportunity to talk to all of our new clients about having a realistic budget. Like don't come into this thinking that, $20,000 for a kitchen is going to be enough. Like in some cases it could be, but if you want a high-end kitchen and you want to include all the bells and whistles, it's not enough. You need to push yourself a little bit further than that. And our budgets now reflect that expectation.
Yeah. And just to be clear, when we did the high-low budget, we were always over the high. So like we were so bad at budgeting, we'd be like, meh. I would be like, lamp, yeah, put $50. And like Alyssa and I would like fill this high-low chart and like project after project, we're like, we're not really ever falling in between. Because then you show that to the client and they assume they're going to be somewhere in the middle, right? And then we actually started sourcing. We were like, no concept. Guys, I've never really enjoyed math. Numbers are not my thing. So now we review the budget really accurately. And we're about to go into a concept review with Rebecca Weatherall. We're doing a project in Muskoka, and that's next week. And like, I'm excited because we've literally itemized every single thing before we've even sourced it. And this is something that I talked about on the podcast with Maya Rofi that just went out. And I learned that skill from her. So that is certainly one of the things I think is very effective. What else? What else has been effective in our process? Or the most, I guess you could say. Like, what is one of the best things? And maybe those who've been here longer could say, like, what has been a game changer?
One other thing I think has been a game changer is, I think internally and a bit more for our clients, is knowing what's coming next. So we have what to expect documents that we send to the clients to give them a heads up. Like, this is how your installation period is going to go. What kind of pitfalls you can expect during that time. It's not all going to be roses. There will be some struggles. There will be some difficulties with like some of our installations. But we as a team will handle it. We as a team are paying attention, and we're going to troubleshoot anything. I think giving our clients an expectation of our capabilities, and that we know that these things could arise. They may not always, but they could arise. I think that's one of the best things that we've developed now, because kind of, it was like, as we like to refer to, it was the Wild West when we would just kind of wing it, and we'd show up and it's like, oh, sorry, your dining table that we custom made and had expectations of it being ready for today to deliver is late, or the stain and the lacquer just went on last night, so now it has to set in your house, or your house may smell as a result for the whole weekend. And it's not funny, but like, you kind of have to look back at it and like say like how ridiculous it was that this is something that actually happened to us. And because we didn't have the expectation of how long that item would take, or we didn't give a realistic expectation even to our vendor as to when we wanted to install it and what the living situation is going to be when it would be delivered. A lot of those things help us with like communicating to our clients so that their expectations are exactly what we need them to know when furniture or any millwork or anything like that in their process arrives.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Rebecca, you had your hand up.
Yes, I was also going to say what we nail is reveal day. It's my favorite part of the project, but I think we do that really well. I think by ordering all the furniture and materials first and storing it, and then having it come to site all on the same day, and we allow, depending how big the project is, 1 to 2, sometimes a whole week for putting in, doing the reveal, putting in all the furniture and seeing it come to life, and then making sure that the clients can go away for the day, and then coming back and they see it all as like that big TV reveal. That is that's what makes your job so worth it, is seeing that.
Yeah. And we never used to do that. It was something that I did obviously when I worked in TV, but it took me a while to sort of figure out how we could actually do it. I would see other designers on Instagram doing it. I'm like, how do they do this? Like, it's one thing in TV because everyone knows there's this deadline, you all have to work together. But in the real world, it's really hard. And so we struggled. And when we first started doing it, it was like, oh my God, so much work. But I agree with you, Rebecca. I feel like we've nailed it. It's harder when it's just a renovation. That kind of sucks. But when it's a decorating job, yeah, I agree. We've totally nailed the reveal, and it's so freaking worth it. One thing I think that you guys haven't mentioned, that's actually just a small little thing that I think we do in our process that has been a game changer, and this is internally, and that is having a weekly email go to our clients. So I think we do a really good job at keeping our clients in the loop of what's going on. It's very rare, and it does happen, but it's very rare that a client has to email us to ask, what's the next step? What's going on with this? Where's that thing? And now I get really upset when the client, you guys know, I'm like, if the client emails us, I'm like, what? Why did they email us first? Because that was our life. And this is something that Claudia didn't see, unfortunately, but like Alyssa, was our life not like continually fielding all the client questions, concerns, and we were never proactive. We were always reactive. So by emailing our clients, even if there's nothing to say, every Thursday afternoon or every Thursday morning, it's been, I think it gives it, I love just knowing that the client knows what's happening.
I would have to agree. I think having the structure of just being able to communicate with them at least once a week, it seems weird to think that like you feel like you need permission to email the client. But like that's kind of how it felt like before we had the process. It's like you almost didn't know what you were supposed to do. Like you didn't know, you didn't want to bother your clients with messages to tell them an update of what's going on. We only emailed them when it was necessary, I guess you would say. Not to say like, oh yeah, we've placed all your orders. They're going to be coming in like 3 weeks time, so that they had an expectation of when to see this process ending. We would just kind of email them when they arrive. I'd be like, hey, we're going to come with your stuff next, like tomorrow. Is that okay? That was more our like everyday and how we were dealing with things. We probably would invoice them more and communicate more about invoicing than we would about just like the general nice fluffy things of their project that they actually want to hear about.
Yeah. And I think separating the financial from the decor, the design, and we've finally figured that out. And it's taken me a while to figure out like, okay, who's in what position and who communicates what to what person and how do we figure that out? But I think keeping the money, and if anyone's listening and you don't have anyone working for you, and I've said this before, I didn't do this, but I know designers who did. Create an email account that's either accounting at Rebecca Hay Designs or John at Rebecca Hay Designs. You should probably use a man's name. People are more responsive when it's a man, sadly. And they're the only person who does the invoicing, because separating that has been a real game changer for us, I find. It used to be me sending the invoices, or you would send them and I was copied, and it was like, we were also sending them design updates and oh my God. And then they're all, blah, 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 yuck.
I would say like in the same line of invoicing, one thing, and I don't know if it's necessarily just our process that has led us to this, but I would say that our past has kind of given us the direction to go this way. We used to do hourly, and now doing a flat fee was a big game changer. I know we still struggle with like trying to figure out like just how much exactly you charge, but I think every designer does. But having the difference between you give the client the expectation that like this is going to cost you X amount, and you know it going into that, versus here's an invoice for all of our hours, and then they contest the hours and all the line items that you've given them for what it takes to actually do your job, right? That was one of the biggest battles we used to have that I don't feel like we have anymore at all. So it's like day and night. We don't have arguments. I don't want to call them arguments, but like there are administrative hours that are required to get any design job done. It's a fact. There will be maybe what someone might think is a lot of time spent sourcing a fabric or fabrics for one sofa. And it's a process to get us there. So I think not giving people like a line by line item of how long it takes us to do our job has been one of the best improvements, because people don't analyze it as with as much scrutiny as they analyze just their invoice with a flat fee.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Okay, there's so many questions I wanted to ask you. We'll have to do this again. But before we sort of finish off, I would love for you guys to share what are some of your best and worst moments with clients? No one wants to share. You don't say the name of the client, obviously. Alyssa, you can share.
Best moments are, I've done some project management. I've kind of, for people who don't know me, I've done pretty much all the roles within Rebecca Hay Designs. I've been here for the journey. So when I was doing project management and I was boots on the ground for a lot of the projects that I was lead on, I think one of the best feelings and or moments with clients is the bond that you developed with them. Like I did the Coleridge project, I did the Langley project, and I think like both of those clients were such great clients. I really enjoyed like the report. Like I actually looked forward to sending them messages and like having phone calls with them. And like it would be, even if it was for a problem or an issue that would occur, it's like you have like a little like conversation because like they're like your friends almost. Like you're doing them a favor almost, like by calling the contractor and being like, hey, I need you to go repair that baseboard. But it just was it's a different level of the working relationship that I really enjoyed. The worst part of working with a client, I guess, would be when a problem is not necessarily our direct issue. You're dealing with a vendor or you're dealing with a contractor that has done something. And as a result of us being the person that has recommended that vendor or contractor, the problems all come on our shoulders because we are the ones that are managing the issues. And you try your best to find the best solutions in a timely manner and communicate it to everybody involved. But frustrations do happen, and having to try and calm everybody and keep everybody level-headed during that is the difficult part of the job. And I've had a couple situations like that personally, and it wears on you emotionally. And you kind of have that second thought of like, why am I doing this? Why am I in this industry? Do I want to continue this? But I think you always come out on the other end because at the end of the day, we do this because we want somebody else to feel the way that we feel about their projects at the end of it, with like joy and happiness that they're glad that they hired somebody to make their space better.
Totally. Yeah, I feel, yeah. I mean, we just want to make people happy. I just want to make you happy. Rebecca.
So I'll start with the worst and then finish off up with a high.
Perfect.
I think the worst is when I guess maybe the client doesn't feel confident in your ability. So it's just when they're on top of every little detail that you are also on top of. And then it just kind of, you're emailing them it becomes every single day instead of like a once a week, like a Thursday progress kind of update. It becomes every day because they want to make sure that, and like, I get it, like it's their home and they want to make sure that everything goes right. But sometimes it feels like it can be like they're stepping on your toes a little bit with your ability. And then I think the best is when I get that email and at the very end of the project from the client that says, great job, you did wonderful. And I think that is just like the end of it all. It's just like, okay, it's all worth it.
Yeah. So if there's any clients listening, there's so much power in just sending that thank you. We, as designers, we really genuinely want to help. And I know the designers listening agree. And that's where sometimes it can get so frustrating when you're dealing with issues, whether it's a supplier or a trade or the client's not happy. And it's like, we literally are always trying our hardest. I don't know a designer in any of the communities I'm a part of that is not always trying their freaking darndest. Like we are always trying to please. And so when a client doesn't appreciate all that goes into it, it's almost like it doesn't matter what they paid us. It makes us feel like we didn't do our job. And I think a lot of us designers are hard on ourselves. I know I am. I know a lot of people feel the same way. A lot of us are women too, which might be part of it. But a lot of us really strive and want to please and want to make it beautiful, and they want to make the client happy. So you're right, Rebecca, when we get that email at the end, or what did we got an email? What was it from? Oh, I can't remember now. There was a project recently where the client sent an email and was just like so over the moon and they were just so happy. And it's like, that's why we do it. And we have to share those wins. And we have a bell in our studio, which of course no one's there anymore to enjoy it. So everyone has their little bell that we got from Talia Toha. So whenever we have a win, it's important for us to, don't worry if you can't find it. If you have it, ring it, girl. We ring a bell to celebrate our wins, because sometimes in this industry, it can feel like there's more hardship then wins. And so I think it's important to recognize those wins. We also have a weekly meeting. It's called Team Tea. And I always make everybody share a moment of gratitude from their day. And we as a team share the wins that we've had as a company. It could be a new project. It could be that we finally finished a project. It could be that an issue is resolved. It could be anything, because it can be, it's human nature, I think, sometimes just to focus on the negative. So yeah, getting those emails from clients is the best. Claudia, do you want to add anything?
I think a really great experience I've had was dealing with a builder. I think one of our best clients was Linvest. They were awesome, really trusted us, really helped us to help them to get to the next level. That was very Jerry Maguire. I'll stop that now. But they were really great. And it's really indicative of just like when someone trusts the process and trusts the team and trusts who trust themselves, because you have to trust yourself that you made a good decision to hire that person. So when somebody like in that circumstance, it was Linvest, trusted themselves that they picked right when they hired Rebecca Hay Designs, they got such an awesome product in the end. And I think it speaks volumes of allowing themselves to trust even themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you. I heard that somewhere. It's like if someone doesn't trust you, it's often because they don't trust themselves to make the right decision. So they don't trust that they've hired the right person. Like we've had a project like that very recently, which was that the client was second guessing everything. And it can be easy as a designer to think like, well, why don't they trust me? They don't like what I'm doing. And it's really not about us. It's Claudia, you hit the nail on the head. It's about them. It's about them not trusting themselves. And so those are the tough ones, but you are right. Linvest has been an incredible repeat client. They have hired us to do lots of things. We love working with builders. Builders are a really great opportunity to showcase your talent. And it's kind of like the happy medium between like residential and kind of commercial. Because the thing about commercial, I would assume, I've only done a few commercial jobs, is that the person who hires you is not married to the exact shade of teal that the chair is, right? As long as it looks good and it's as you presented it to them, they are happy. What happens with a homeowner sometimes, and this might be a whole other conversation, but is that they get fixated on something and then they obsess over something. And it's because they have a personal reaction to a striped wallpaper. These are personal things that we have no control over. And that makes our job as a residential designer that much harder. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. There's so much we can talk about, clearly. Does anyone have a last nugget of wisdom you want to share to the designers who are listening?
Design is very emotional for the designer on the job and for the clients that are receiving the work that you're giving them. So I think patience is probably one of the best things when you're working with or without a process. Because things will always take time and there will always be some give and take in the conversation. So just try and prevail with very cool heads.
I will also share, we kind of touched on it before, is just like a lot of designers can make beautiful designs, but I think it's the customer service experience. Is that something we're all still trying to work on, definitely in the process. But I think people remember what you say to us all the time, Rebecca, is people remember how you make them feel. And I think practicing that customer service is key.
Yeah, totally. And unfortunately, that can be one of the most challenging parts of our job. You know, we've all nailed it. We know how to design. Dan, we can design in our sleep, but customer service and working with humans on an individual basis, shoot, that's challenging.
Yes.
Got it. Claudia, any last nuggets you want to share from your experience?
Sure. I guess I'll follow Rebecca's suit there and take something from you that I like always is like, it's about like the progress over the perfection. And I think like in anything, so whether it is your design or whether it is even just instilling a new process within your like organization, I think anything that you contribute to like advancing yourself and to advancing whatever it is you're trying to do is more important than having this perfect end product in the end. And I think it goes for anything like, your designs or even just your process or who you're hiring, anything that you do to contribute to your goal is better than absolutely doing nothing. And I think for people who are listening, even the fact that they're listening to something like a design podcast is already contributing towards their end goal.
Awesome. I love that advice, girl. All right. Thank you very much to my beautiful team for joining and sharing and being open. I do appreciate that. Do you want anyone to follow you on Instagram? You're welcome to share your handles if you want. I don't know.
I need to create a design one first. Mine's too personal right now.
Yeah. We're working on getting Rebecca her own professional Instagram account. Well, you can follow Rebecca Hay Designs and you can see all these lovely women there behind the scenes. Hopefully we'll be back in the studio one day soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Well, there you have it. What did you think? Kind of interesting, hey, to see different people's perspectives. What really resonated with me was how Rebecca and Alyssa, how they view our process versus how Claudia views it, because Claudia hasn't known anything different with us. It's just really interesting. I learned a lot from that podcast myself. It's also interesting to see how we all value the same parts of our process. I mean, the idea that we are really finally on top of our numbers and budget, that's like a huge win for my business. And that everyone else values that too. It's really wonderful. It's wonderful to have a team that sees the value in all the massive improvements that I do. It's pretty funny when they talked about me wanting to rearrange the office, because I literally still do that like every time I walk into the office. I'm like, I feel like this needs to change. This layout needs to change. It's just the designer in me. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And if you have any questions, please join our Designer Meetup Facebook group. I will link that here in the show notes. That's a great opportunity in a private forum where no clients will hear or see you to share and ask questions of other designers. And if you are interested in signing up for our free masterclass, it is now open for registration. It's 5 steps to establishing your own unique process and create raving fan clients. And I'm hosting 3 masterclasses. So you can pick a date or time that works for you. Go to RebeccaHay.com/masterclass. And I'll see you soon.